and welcome to a brand new video where this week we're going to be talking about all things product photos. Now, if you've not come across my channel before, my name is Emma and I run Sunshine Lane, which is all about adding a little bit more positivity into your life and nudging you towards some self-care through the joyous world of stationery and gifts and cards and all that lovely stuff. Now, as a fellow small business owner, I know just how much product photos matter, or even just as a shopper. I know myself that a good product photo can make the difference between a scroll on buy or a must-have purchase. But I also know that as a small business owner who probably got into this because you love being creative and suddenly realised that you have to be a master of all these different areas of small business, that getting those lovely product shots can feel like a massive hurdle and it can feel really overwhelming. I have been there feeling totally overwhelmed on more days than I'd like to count, and I think there's a lot of misinformation about all the gadgets and the expensive equipment and the fancy studios that you need to be able to create really eye-catching product photos. And so I really wanted to do a dedicated video to this to bust that myth and say that's really not the case and show you my easy method that I use to capture and edit my product photos without breaking the bank or needing to hire professional help. It is totally doable, even from your own home, whatever space you have. And speaking of making things amazingly eye-catching, you'll want to stick around because later on in the video, I'm going to introduce you to a really cool design tool that's going to help you really make the most out of those photos you take and create amazing visuals for your products. So let's see what my product photography setup looks like. If you watch my channel, you'll know that I now work in a studio at the bottom of my garden, but I have worked from many a place, my bedroom, the dining room table. You can totally do this, even if where you set up to take your photos is a patch of carpet on the floor. I've been there before. So this applies to any small corner you can commandeer for the purpose of taking your photos. But I'm going to start with just a regular desk in my office. There's no fancy photography backdrops or permanent lighting setups. It's just a spot that works for me. And then you want to think about lighting, and this might help you choose a spot. So lighting is really key when you're looking at taking your photos, and natural light can be really great. Now, I have filmed this video on the worst possible day for using natural light because the sun is glaring in through the window. It's not a usual day in England. The perfect lighting would be a kind of overcast day so that you're getting natural light through a nearby window, but you're not getting harsh rays of light and then pockets of shadow, which is what we're getting today. But I'm going to show you some ways to try and work around that. But if you can try and find a bright but cloudy day, which we have a lot of if you're in England, then you're onto a winner, because you just want to avoid the harsh contrast of light and shadow that you can see here. So what do we do on a day like today where the light isn't perfect? You can use something white to bounce the light. So whether it is a piece of foam board, you can pick those up really inexpensively, or just a piece of white card. So I have these poster boards that I use as backdrops for my photos, which I will talk about a bit later. And on the back, it's white, and it's a little hard to see on the camera, but can you see that this pocket of shadow here, when I slide in the white piece of card, the light hits it and bounces and cancels out that shadow. So have a play around with propping up something white, whether it's a white sheet, a white piece of card, just some white paper even, to try and bounce that light and see how it interrupts the shadows. And you'll find the best spot that works for you depending where the light's coming in. So it's like a little light reflector on a budget. Now, if natural light isn't always available, or like today where it's just too harsh, you can use inexpensive lighting to create a balanced effect. Now, I have added to my setup over time. I've been running my business since 2020, and over that time, I've added in products to my setup that have all been relatively inexpensive. So I have a simple ring light that I got for about £30, and I have a softbox light that I think was about £40, but I asked for it for Christmas, so I didn't even pay for it. You can use lamps, you can change the bulbs in the lamps to use warm or cool light depending on the look you're going for. It doesn't necessarily have to be anything super fancy or expensive. But getting some basic LED lights can be reasonably inexpensive these days. And I have closed my blinds to block out the harsh light and use my lights to control where the light is going and adjust to avoid the pockets of shadow that I don't want. And having a light coming in from either side just really helps to balance the shadows. So it might be that you use the light from a window and then you put another ring light or something similar in to just light the other side. Depends what you feel you need. You can do it absolutely without these lights, but it helps keep things consistent throughout your different photographs, especially if you're shooting at different times of day. Sometimes I come in and I might have done some in the morning and then I carry on after my little girl's gone to bed and maybe it's dark now and the photos are going to look totally different. And if the photos are as consistent as possible, that's really going to speed up your editing later on. Now let's talk backdrops. I like to keep this relatively simple, and all I have purchased is 2 big poster boards from Hobbycraft. These were about £3 to £4 each, and they're in colours that complement my brand and my products. Depending on the size of the products you're photographing, I have also used 12 by 12 paper packs so that I can swap in and out different colours and patterns. But generally, I just tend to go with a colour on the bottom and a colour on the back. Sometimes I will go with just the desk and a colour on the back. It depends very much on the vibe of your products and your brand. For some people, the more natural kind of wood of the desk would work better. And you could see here that something that I could do if I cleared this corner of the desk, I could just use the wood of the desk with the white of my wall, and that actually looks quite lovely if you added a couple of props in and you're done. So it doesn't necessarily have to be something you can spend money on. Maybe you've got a room with really funky wallpaper or a nice painted wall that really matches the vibe that you're going for. Make use of what you've got. But the poster boards are a really good option because they come in loads and loads of colours and they've got a sturdiness to them that helps them stand up. And I normally just put a box behind it to prop it up and we're good to go. Now for a little bit of fun with styling. So this is where you can play around and have fun and really make your photos pop. And this is something I've got a lot more confidence with over time. So I didn't start out using many props at all, and I like to take a mix now of photos with lots of props and more minimal, and just have a mix of things to choose from. And I'm trying to build up a little box of props over time that includes general items as well as seasonal items. So for this being my spring collection, I picked up actually just a few things from Asda that they had in their Easter decoration aisle. I had some little wooden characters that were £1 each and some bunting that was a few pounds. But my biggest tip is to shop what you have around. So whether it's things like ribbon or tape, craft supplies, depending if that's something you're into, they can make really fun and easy props just to add in pops of colour. Me being a stationery-based business, I tend to look at all my stationery, pens, office supplies that are in coordinating colours to the products that I'm trying to photograph, and that's easy for me to gather. So I'll gather some notebooks, maybe some different pattern papers, even if it's just grid paper, dotted paper, things like paper clips, binder clips, different coloured pens. They all make really lovely props that you probably have lying around already. You don't have to purchase anything extra. When I'm thinking about props, I like to think about setting a scene. So where will the customer be using this product? And for me, with it being stationery, then you want to see sticky notes, for example, surrounded by other stationery items. Washi tape, for example, in a setup with a notebook and a pen would make sense. So when the customer sees the photo, then they're going to picture it in use, and being able to picture it in their own home and in their own life and lifestyle is going to encourage them to purchase it more. But even better, I would say the best prop is other products you sell. So It has that added bonus of cross-promoting other products, especially if you've got a lot of coordinating items or a collection. But also, if someone looks at your photo and messages you and says, "Oh, I love that pen that's in your picture. Where did you get that from?" You don't have to direct them elsewhere. You direct them back to your own shop, because a lot of the products in your photos, they're all from your own collection. So for this photo shoot, I probably spent about £5 on the bunting and the little wooden characters. Next, let's talk cameras. Now, I have a camera that I use for vlogging, but I don't always use it to take my product photos. And the good news is that most smartphones now have an amazing camera that is going to be more than good enough to take your product photos. And for this, I use my iPhone for all of my product photos. Like I said, I've added some things onto my setup over the years, like a couple of lights, a couple of tripods, but you absolutely don't need to do that. Things like tripods, I've got away with using stacks of books to prop my phone against. There are always workarounds for things if that's just not in your budget right now or you're just starting out. That will be more than good enough and do the job, because all that really matters is the end photo that you end up with. Next, we're going to explore angles. So I would recommend don't just take one photo from the front. Take from different angles, from the side, from above, from the front. It will show off different details and different angles of your products, but also mean that you have a range of different photos to add interest when people are flicking through. So I tend to take lots and lots of initial photos and just tweak the angle with every shot that I take. And then that way, when I get to the editing stage, I can pick my favourites and take those through to my photo editing software, and the rest will get disregarded at that stage. It minimises the chance that I think, oh, those angles weren't right and now I've got to go back and set that shot up again. I just take more than I know I'll need and I pick the best ones and put them through to my photo editor. So a great tip when trying to get sharp, clear photos is to think about stability. Using a tripod is great, or something like standing your phone against something. And a little trick that I really like is that if you're an Apple user and you happen to have an Apple Watch, you can actually use your watch as a camera remote. So you'll be able to see if the shot is set up, and then you can take the picture without having to touch your phone. Minimize the risk that that's going to wobble the phone and the shot might be a little bit blurry. So it's a bit of a hands-free trick, especially as well if you've set your phone up on a tripod that's top down and you might not be able to see if everything's in shot. You'll be able to preview it on your watch. So if you already have those, it's a neat little trick that I learned. I don't know if there's an Android equivalent because I don't use it, but if it's something you already own, then I think it's a function of it that you could totally make the most of. So something that I will do is set my phone up on a tripod and then set up a shot, and then say I've got multiple products that I want to swap in and out. I'll keep the camera in one position and I'll swap the products in and out, whether it's multiple stickers, multiple sticky notes, whatever it might be. I'll swap those in and out, and I'll just keep pressing a few shots for each one without having to move the camera. But then if I'm thinking about getting lots of different angles, for speed, I don't tend to use a tripod. I will just do a few photos in each position, tweaking it slightly, and then I'll pick the best. And if there's any blurry, then hopefully I've got enough shots that that doesn't matter. So I tend to use both methods depending on what and how I'm shooting. Something that I've often struggled with is figuring out how to take photos of little products. So if this is you, I want to give you some tips. So my go-to trick is to think of things that you can prop up your item with, because if things don't necessarily stand up on their own at an angle that's going to be good to photograph, it can be tricky. One thing I do is hold the item, because I think hands can make photos look more personal. They can also give an idea of scale, and I'm not beyond just painting one nail that you'll see to get a nice looking shot. Not that that's necessarily needed, but hands are a really good option if you just want to get some shots of holding the item. But also think about small items that could prop your items up. So things like erasers, pencil sharpeners. That's great because they slope, so you might be able to lay it on top and it props it up at an angle. Washi tapes are great. I tend to stack them up however many I need. But even a blob of blue tack has become my main go-to because you can mould it into whatever shape you need to hide it so it won't be seen in the final photo, and the stickiness will also help grip to the product and the surface. So whatever helps you take that perfect photo shot, have a hunt around for little items. Okay, let's fast forward to the magic editing stage. This is where you can really polish your photos and give them that lift and that professional look that really fits with your brand aesthetic. My go-to editing app on my phone and my iPad is Photoshop Express, which is a free editing app. I've also used Snapseed in the past, I've used Lightroom in the past, but I find Photoshop Express has a lot of really good features on their free version, and it's really handy for editing on the go. So first up, cropping and straightening. Now for this collection, I decided to edit my photos without cropping them. I wanted one version of an edited photo for each product that I could use for different purposes and crop it depending on that purpose later on, so that I could get the most mileage out of my photos. And this has been working really well for me, because if you think now, everything used to be mostly square. Now Instagram has changed to a 4:5 ratio. I have that to work with. I still have square photos on my website. I also like to use some product photos as backgrounds for my Instagram stories, so 16:9. So having edited photos that I can quickly crop and use for different purposes has actually been a game changer for me recently. So in terms of cropping, the only thing that I've really done is a bit of straightening on these. Next, I play around with the brightness and contrast. So for my photos, I want a bright, colourful look, because that is what Sunshine Lane is all about, those bright sunny vibes. So I'll lift the exposure and then I'll have a play around with bringing up the shadows and then introducing more white into there to lift the colours. The main things I tend to use for my photos are adjusting the highlights and shadows and the whites and the blacks. But sometimes, although this really lifts your products, it can then wash the colours out a little bit. So I then use vibrance and saturation to lift the colours up again. So a little tip here is to keep your products next to you when you're editing, so that you can check the product and make sure that those colours are still accurate to the product that you're selling. Because once you've edited it and it's tweaked it, it might not quite look representative. So once you've done your edits and you're playing around with the saturation and things, you can just do a quick visual check and make sure that it's still faithful to the product you photographed. And for those of us who have a million photos to edit and are looking for ways to save time, Photoshop Express is a lifesaver for this, especially if all your photos were consistently lit, like I said. So what I did here was I edited my first photo, and then if I go to looks, then you can save this look, which is essentially all the edits you've made, as a kind of preset, and I named it Wildflower. And then for all my other photos, I just go to looks and add the wildflower look, and then I use that as a basis to think, does this need any more tweaks or is it already done? And then the only other thing I really play around with is the healing tool. So whether it be that actually I've captured the photo and there's a corner of the table showing, I can just scribble over it and it'll extend that background colour. Or let's say I've taken a picture of something with my hands and I just want to edit out any blemishes, any bits of dust on the table. You just give it a little scribble and it'll remove that from the photo for you. Okay, so now that we have got our beautifully edited product photos, I want to introduce you to a new design tool I've been playing with that has already been game-changing for my product photos and for my small business, and that is Kittl. And I want to thank Kittl for sponsoring this next segment of the video. So Kittl is an incredible online graphic design platform that is so easy to use, even if you don't have any design experience. And it's perfect for taking your product photos and turning them into into eye-catching marketing materials. One of my most used features is the background remover. So with just a few clicks, you can get rid of any distracting backgrounds from your product photos, leaving you with a clean image of just your product that you can place anywhere. Let me show you how quickly and easily it works. So here's my photo that I want to remove the background on. I just click background remover, and you'll see that it processes, and then as quick as that, the background is removed. Kittle even has AI tools that can generate different backgrounds, so you can take your product photos and be able to create multiple versions of your product photos, which can have so many uses. And something I really think I'm going to use this for is it's great for creating seasonal versions of your product photos to share on social media without having to keep reshooting everything. And it can also speed things up if you just have time to take a couple of simple product photos, but then generate different versions of it using these tools. And that can be really good for things like Etsy algorithms when they want you to use all the available photo slots. This is a great way to do that. And if you're looking to get even more mileage out of those product photos, then Kittle has tons of pre-designed templates for everything from social media posts to website banners, even thank you cards. They're all professionally designed and super easy to customize with your own branding and product photos. No graphic design experience required. Honestly, Kittle is already proving such a fantastic tool for my business and has already saved me countless hours. And the visuals that I can create look so professional. Plus, the team at Kittle is offering a special discount if you want to give it a try. So you can use the code on the screen now for 25% off, and I will leave the link in the description below. So do check it out and see how it can make your product photos shine even brighter. So there you have it. I hope you've seen in this video the difference a few small changes and a few different techniques can make to your product photos. Like I said, without breaking the bank, without having to hire help. And I think if I had a final tip, it would be to try and achieve consistency. So you want to make sure that the look of your photos represents the feel of your brand and that there is some cohesiveness across the board. So whether it's that you always stick to certain colour tones or a bright colour palette or perhaps more naturey, natural world elements in your photos, whatever it might be, have some sort of thread running through them that when people see them, none of them look out of place and they think, yeah, that's definitely Sunshine Lane, or insert business name here. It'll really help your brand stand out and look professional and be recognisable no matter where your customers are coming across you online. And don't be afraid to experiment. Try different backgrounds, different angles, lighting setups, move things around. Be playful, try and find the fun in it, especially if it's become something like it used to be for me. It was the one thing that I always dreaded doing. Try and bring the fun back into it and just set yourself a timer and say, I'm going to give myself this hour to play around with taking some new product photos and just having no rules for it. Don't do what you normally do. Try a few different things. Practice definitely makes perfect, and you'll start to develop an eye for what works best for your products and for your brand. And then if you've done it, give yourself a massive pat on the back, because think how many places you can use these product photos. They're like happy little ambassadors going out into the world, shouting about your products and your brand. And tools like Kittle can really, really help you get that full mileage out of the photos you've taken. So a big thank you to Kittle again for sponsoring a segment of this video and for developing a tool that really helps small business owners cut down on the amount of time it takes to create stunning visuals and to be able to put the ability into our hands that we might not otherwise have had. Before you go, I would absolutely love to hear from you if you found this video helpful. So do leave me a like, subscribe if you're not a subscriber already. I share tips and tricks videos like this one, but also a lot of behind the scenes studio vlogs so you can see what goes on behind the scenes of running Sunshine Lane. And I'd love to know what other kind of business related content you'd like to see. So leave me a comment and let me know. And if you've reached the end of the video, leave me a little camera emoji to let me know that you made it to the end. So happy photographing, happy creating. I would love to see any before and after photos if you go through this process and create some photos you're happy with. And until next week, take care. I'll see you then. Bye everyone.